For the first time since 1958, a complete repaving job has given the Daytona International Speedway a total facelift. Smooth and flat out fast, it is a sight to behold. Welcome everyone to NASCAR Sprint Cup winter testing. If you haven't been with us so far this weekend, it has been interesting to say the least. We have a lot of new faces in new places. We have a new nose on this car, a new pavement on Daytona, and also a new fuel in the tank. Hello everybody, I'm John Roberts. Jeff Hammond along with us here in the infield pit studio. And you know what, Jeff, it's been very interesting so far because we've seen guys take on all kinds of different approaches to this test, and we've also seen some guys cut it short.
Yeah, we really have, JR. And the thing is so cool about it is they've done such a great job here with this racetrack. Plus, they've already had the tire test back in December. A lot of guys took advantage of that. Yes, they've been able to cut their testing a little bit short, but everybody has come down here with an agenda, and they've been able to get through the agenda. The weather was a little bit iffy on Friday, but overall, it's been very successful for everybody.
And let's talk really quickly, Jeff, about the numbers behind this repaving job. $20 million, 50,000 pounds of tons of specialized asphalt, and also 1.4 million square feet of surface. What a job, and they got it done early.
They really did. I mean, Joey Chitwood and everybody here at Daytona did an excellent job, and the cool thing about it is that this racetrack is as smooth as the top of this desk.
Let's talk about some of the news items that have come our way so far. This season, we are talking about a new point system. Now, the NASCAR officials that talked, Jeff, weren't that specific about it, but they said it's coming, and it could be coming next week.
And next Wednesday night, possibly, Brian France will be making an announcement about the point system.
And now they did actually say that a driver can only run for one championship among NASCAR's 3 top series.
Yeah, when you sign in on your license and declare what you're doing, you have to make your mind up whether you run a Sprint Cup Nationwide or the Camping World Truck Series.
And also the new fuel is E15 ethanol fuel in the race car, and also the nose, which we'll talk a lot more about as this day continues on. New look to the car, but let's talk about these cars on the racetrack. Jeff, this is what we wanted to see. We've seen a lot of single car runs so far. Now we're starting to see some drafting.
But you mentioned the agenda. A lot of these teams have been going through the agenda of getting their test, parameters ran earlier in the week. Now they told us, they said if everything works like they wanted to and they get completed, they're going to switch over and do some multi-car drafting. We hope to see a big packs, but so far, this is what we've seen a lot of so far. 2-car hookups, normally hooked up with your teammate making runs.
We started out with 34 cars at this racetrack. Some have gone away, and we've actually added one new car, a team that came down here just a little bit late, and that's the 66 driven by Michael McDowell. A.J. Allmendinger and Kyle Busch now nose to tail, and A.J. has been about one of the busiest drivers so far throughout this test session as he has been out on the racetrack for a ton of laps. Got a couple of pit reporters working for you, Chris Devoda and Bob Dillner, and we're going to start out with Bob.
JR, we always talk about the E15 fuel by Sunoco, the new ethanol that's going to be used in the Sprint Cup Series, but there's also a new fuel filler, and this is it. This is actually one they're going to use in the garage area, not over the pit wall. But as you can see, there is a new neck on this, and you can see the new spout. That spout right there alone, $800. But what this does is it eliminates the catch can guy, because when the fuel fills up in the car, it actually comes back through this tube right there, and that eliminates the catch can. Now, I told you this is one of the short ones actually, and I'm going to have to put this down right here, but right next door is one of the ones that they will use over the wall. Both this nose right here, $800, and also the fuel filler on the car is $800. So certainly an expense for the teams, and when this baby is filled up, it's almost 100 pounds, Chris Devoda.
Something else that is new is the new nose for these cars. We were really concerned, worried what would happen when these cars got to Daytona with this new nose. This is our last session today of 3 days of testing here in front of Paul Menard's car. And we talked about, if you've been watching us on speed.com, you have seen the shape here of the new nose. What does this mean to the drivability here at Daytona? Really, so far, not much. The teams know it's really going to change things at the intermediate tracks when we go to places like Las Vegas and Fontana in March. So here, the new pavement is really what's different. The new fuel can, the new fuel, those are the things that they're working on and changing. Right now, the new nose, they say, is pretty much par for the course. Johnny?
Krista, thanks a lot. A lot of work that goes into the offseason. It all starts paying dividends right now as we see a 4-car pack and a 2-car breakaway on the track. We got a full hour of TV coverage for you here. Then we're going to send it back to speed.com. And when we come back on the other side of the break, we'll send it high atop the Daytona International Speedway and join Steve, Darrell, and Larry. Stay with us, everybody.
Back at the Daytona
Daytona International Speedway. Sprint Cup winter testing winding up the third of 3 days here on this 2.5-mile track with $20 million of brand new asphalt, and it has opened to rave reviews. Nose to tail, how about that? Brian Vickers back in the 83, Kyle Busch in the 18. We know you folks at home are having withdrawals, winter withdrawals, and a lot of you have been pounded by snow. I tell you what, when John Roberts and Hammond down there were talking, we were jumping up and down because they were finally drafted. We've just
more than 2 cars at a time.
Yeah, we've seen single car runs or just 2-car hookups. They're going at it now.
They really are. And we saw like 6 or 8 cars there. But the thing that keeps happening is it's hard to keep them bunched up. Because as we've seen in Talladega, 2 guys get together, and, man, they pick up 10 miles an hour over the pack. So I know we're not a lot of cars out here right now, and maybe that'll change when everybody gets out there, but it's just fascinating to watch 2 cars pick up so much speed.
But when you think about it, we had 18 teams that were here in mid-December doing a Goodyear tire test. Most of those teams, along with about 16 or 17 others, back down here for this 3-day test. I know this is a 4-hour session this afternoon. Of course, at 2 o'clock, we'll be going to speed.com with our coverage. But this is almost, I guess you could say, like happy hour. Happy 4 hours, because everything you learned in December at the Goodyear tire test, everything over the last 2.5 days, you're trying to put it all together before you leave here to come back in less than 3 weeks for the Daytona 500.
Just listen what it's happy hour. Everybody's happy. Yeah, I love my car. There's plenty of love to go around. This is a great time to be down here, isn't it?
What did you say, though? Those hate mongers are just lurking out there?
Are laying in the weeds.
This is the honeymoon period.
They're over there in Lake Lloyd with their snorkel sticking up, waiting to come out.
But for now, hope springs eternal.
For now, that's right. For now.
And what we're seeing here, we have 3 Toyotas with the 1 Chevrolet of Jeff Gordon at 24. One thing that I have noticed for 3 days, the Toyota teams, they have not been bashful about drafting. We saw Michael Waltrip Racing's car. Of course, they're not here today. They were drafting the other day. The Joe Gibbs cars, they've been almost in draft form and race form for the whole 3 days, as well as those Red Bull cars.
And Larry, I think that because of what we're seeing, I believe that these guys have determined that this is what it's going to take to win any race down here. Whether it's the Bud Shootout or the 150s or particularly the Daytona 500, you've got to have a car that you're comfortable with, somebody doing what's happening right here with the 11 and the 24. You got to have a car you can drive comfortably with somebody pushing you at 195 miles an hour.
Daryl, you said something interesting yesterday, and that is this $20 million paving job is almost too good, that it might lull these drivers into perhaps a false sense of security.
Well, I think what happens is when you got a lot of grip and you get away with stuff we're seeing these guys get away with right now, you get a little reckless, you get a little careless. And what always happens is a failure to communicate. You think that the guy you're drafting off of like this right here, he's going to move up a little bit and let you go by. Maybe he decides to move down a little bit and let you go by. And you get that deal where you're crossing over and somebody runs into somebody and sends them sailing.
I think this is the first time of this 3-day test that we've seen the 24 car of Jeff Gordon out there in a draft. What Hendrick Motorsports decided to do with basically losing half of the day yesterday to rain is the 48 and the 88 went in drafting and race form. The 24 and the 5 stayed in qualifying trim. But Krista, now Jeff Gordon is out there doing some drafting.
Yeah, you mentioned Jimmy Johnson. Because they got that drafting and they actually left, packed up last night. They are not here. If you joined us yesterday at 1 o'clock for our show, it was a full field. Now you're seeing empty spots in the garage. The 2 empty spots there next to the 29 hauler, the 33 and 31 are gone. They left last night. Down here a little further next to the Pennzoil hauler of Kurt Busch, the 14 and 39 used to be parked there. They just packed up following the morning session after doing some drafting. So a lot of these guys, you wait in line for concert tickets. Sometimes you settle, we'll just take these seats. That's what some of these people have done. They said, we've done enough. We're going to leave. The guys who are left here today, they're wanting the front row seats. They're doing all that they can do here in this drafting session, and they're getting the good tickets.
And parity is just everywhere. Look at the times here. 45.66, 45.66, 45.67, 45.68, 197 miles an hour, 0.1 on all the cars that have run the fastest laps. All just throw a blanket over them.
I thought what was interesting, Krista talked about the 48 going home. They didn't even have the car they're going to race in the 500.
They're working on it as we speak.
Yes, they are. Well, we're not packing up and going home. We're going to stay with you till the top of the hour. January 29th, the Rolex Sports Car Series kicks off the season with Johnson, Pruitt, Franchitti, McMurray, and more of the greatest drivers in the world compete in America's premier endurance race. Don't miss the Rolex 24 at Daytona live Saturday. That's next week, 3 Eastern, and only on Speed.
You're the NASCAR boys will be joining that little race. Jimmy Johnson, Jamie McMurray, Juan Pablo Montoya, who's been a part of winning this race twice. And my understanding, Speed's Kenny Wallace will be participating in that race.
He's been down here testing. Let's go to Bob Dillner as we watch Carl Edwards.
You can tell by the back end of Denny Hamlin's car, the bump draft very evident and very important here. And so is the agenda for all of these teams here in the waning hours of practice on this final day of testing here at Daytona, especially for the Joe Gibbs bunch. They right now are all trying to work together. In fact, you see Mike Ford and Dave Rogers. Mike Ford is Denny Hamlin's crew chief. Dave Rogers is Kyle Busch's crew chief. They all want to get in the draft, but I spent some time talking to Mike Ford about getting all 3 cars in the draft. He says that sounds like a perfect plan, but the problem is you really need 4 cars to make a draft work here when you have more than 2, because the 2-car breakaway is so important. Mike Ford, Dave Rogers, and the 20 of Joey Logano with Greg Zipadelli. Like I said, all would like to get together, and there's Greg right there. They're all talking about this, but they need another player in the draft to really learn a bunch more when they get at least 4 cars together, guys.
I just believe you need more than 4.
Well,
I'd like to see about 10 or 12 to get together and get out there.
like we've been saying, this is controlled drafting. I mean, this is like perfect scenario. You can control what everybody's going to do, you know, what everybody's kind of agenda is. Wait till you get people out here that are not a part of your agenda.
Well, that's like, you know, taking batting practice or shooting free throws when there's not 15,000 people screaming. It's different.
Or hitting the golf ball on a practice green.
I've been talking to Jamie McMurray on a regular basis, who's been kind of feeding me some information. Of course, won the Daytona 500 a year ago. I talked to him during the lunch break. And, you know, they're not drafting because obviously that's their Daytona 500 car. They do not want to beat it up, and they've got still a huge list of things to A, B, B, C. But he said, Larry, I just believe that these guys to some degree are deceiving themselves with just these 2-car little tandems. That's not what you're going to have in the Budweiser Shootout, in the Gatorade Dual qualifying race, and for sure in the Daytona 500. I think everybody relates it to Talladega. But like him and I were talking, this racetrack all the way around is so much narrower than Talladega.
Marcus Ambrose aboard the 9-car this year for Richard Petty Motorsports. He heads to the garage.
Well, what we see, how many times have we seen cars go into first turn or even the third turn and get a little jukey, back in and snap around just a little bit? Well, that's okay when it's just you and your buddy, because he'll cut you some slack. But if you start doing that and you got somebody to your outside or somebody trying to get to your inside and you start wobbling like that, you're going to wreck. And that's the thing. You're in a comfort zone right now. You got time to recover, grab that thing, got a whole racetrack to work with. You wait till you fill up the racetrack with all your partners out there.
I'm not even sure your buddy will give you any slack if we get down to 5 to go.
He can't.
Third day of testing here of a 3-day test. Todd Bodine started the test in that car. Landon Castle's in it now.
Yeah, this is a Germain car, teammate to Casey Mears in the 13 right now. Possibly just a 1-race deal for that 60-car Landon Castle. Kevin Harvick, as Krista well documented, the lone RCR car that's left here, that 29 car. He'll be going for his 3rd consecutive Budweiser Shootout win when we get back here, actually 3 weeks from tonight.
Won 3 races a year ago at Talladega, Daytona here in July, and Michigan in August. He says this track is a little different with the pavement, but the chess game is still the same. Stay with us here in Daytona.
Thanks, Mike Joy. We definitely will be tuning in. The tough thing about Barrett Jackson, though, for us poor guys, is kind of like going to a restaurant where there's great food on the menu. You just can't afford to buy it. You just have to look and stay hungry.
That's the reason why I stay on the outside looking in those restaurants like that. Like last night, I was watching Rick Hendrick there at the Barrett Jackson buying Corvettes. Daryl and I were both watching, and we could not believe it. And it's like, man, I'd like to be able to do that, but you know you can't.
It is a true sign that spring is soon upon us. Drafting practice down here at Daytona. Let's go to Chris Devoto.
Carl Edwards outside of his race car, and we were discussing the drafting procedure and whether it's going to be a big pack or 2-car packs. We know that the 2-car works at Talladega. Is it going to work here in the 500?
You know, as we were talking, I was thinking about it. I guess that's what's going to be what wins the race. You know, it's going to be 2 cars pushing one another, and that's, I think, why you see so many guys working on that. They're trying to time everything to see what they can do. I mean, I just saw somebody go by pushing Joey right there, and they're screaming. I mean, they're going, I guess, around 200 miles per hour average. So if we go out and practice drafting, which I'm not sure if we're going to do, that's probably what we'll practice.
I know you say if, and I watch your face as you say it. I know it's killing you as a driver to be down here. I know it's important. You've got all these engineers. You're doing all the baseline stuff, and it's going to come back to pay dividends down the road. But are you just sitting here, like, chomping at the bit?
Yeah, it's yeah, you sit on pit road and you wait, you know, and the biggest drama for me so far is my cell phone fell off the dash and we had to find that. But other than that, you know, you just sit in the race car, go out and collect data, and I'm watching these guys go by and they're pushing each other's bumpers and they look like they're having a lot of fun. So hopefully Bob will let me do it a little bit, but if he doesn't, I understand, like you said, it's for the greater cause, you know, greater good.
And more importantly, did you find your cell phone? You did find it?
Yeah, I found it. They're hard to find in these race cars when they end up, you know, under all the equipment and the seats and everything, but they found it for me. It was nice of them.
Okay, thanks, Carl. Johnny?
Well, Krista, I hope when you looked under there, you know, when you look under your own car looking for your seatbelt, you find your hairbrush and some gum wrappers. But I don't think you do that in one of the race cars. But, Jeff, these guys have had a lot of spare time when they're sitting on there. Some guys have chosen to Twitter to their fans while they're sitting and waiting. And you got 2 lines out on pit road. You got a line for the guys who want to go out and do single-car runs. Then you got another line for the guys who want to go out and draft, like Denny Hamlin and Joey Logano are showing us here. Those guys tend to get a lot more track time.
Oh, they do. Again, you know, we saw earlier this morning with the Stewart-Haas cars of Tony Stewart and Ryan Newman, which they've loaded up and went home. They ran almost 100 laps combined in that morning session. So, yeah, you can get a lot more laps on the racetrack. Currently, Denny Hamlin, he's got the most laps on the racetrack so far. He's already run 14 laps, and Joey Logano there, he's got 11.
26 cars have taken time in this test session so far. This is the final session in the 3 days. And if you look at the speed chart, Jeff, roughly 10 miles an hour difference between the fastest non-drafter and the slowest drafter.
Believe it or not, I think that speed is starting to separate even more. I think we're getting closer to the fact of almost 14 miles an hour with some of these cars that are getting hooked up here this afternoon.
197.3 miles per hour. Now, Jeff, in between the time that we had the tire test where the cars were going very fast on this very smooth surface and we came down here, NASCAR took a little bit of restrictor plate down to slow the cars down because you may not think so, but faster racing isn't necessarily better racing.
No, NASCAR is definitely going to work to keep these cars, you know, under 200 miles an hour, you know, when they get in the big pack. So they feel like that's what they've got to work on. And that's one of the reasons why they took it away before they came back here for this test. And I'm not going to be one bit surprised with the speeds we're seeing right now that they're not over there thinking, well, maybe we need to do a little bit more. Maybe we need to take another 64th of an inch or something away. You know, we saw this 32nd, you know, slow them down. And, you know, again, we just don't know. You know, everything's so new, and everybody's got to be ready to react to what's going on out here. So far, these guys have done a great job. Nobody's made a mistake so far, but we've only seen 2 cars really get hooked up, really nose to tail.
Race fans, we have a bit of advice for you. Stay with us here on Speed because as this session goes on and the rest of the day on Speed.com, we expect to see some packs of cars from these weekend warriors. But do not forget, coming in February, Car Warriors, rather, a network premiere on Speed. Don't want to miss that. Back with more winter testing in a moment.
Are you ready to hub it out? NASCAR Race Hub back this Monday, 7 p.m. Ray Evernham, Larry Mack will have all the updates from the media tour, which starts in Charlotte next week. A full recap of testing. The hub is back.
But I think the key, you see that media tour visits, that will be all week long. And I think JR and Jeff talked about it at the top of the show. I think one of the bigger announcements to come out sometime next week will be pretty much putting a period on what the point system is going to be, what the chase format's going to be, and at the end of each and every day, whatever news comes out, my man Steve Burns will have it on NASCAR Race Hub.
And not wait to hub it out.
You know, I've been watching these guys, and this is not the first time I've kind of observed this. Last year and in the past, particularly here at Daytona, if you were pushing someone like that, we see the 11 cars picked up a big piece of trash on the bottom of the air down there. If you moved around behind the car in front of you, like I see some of these guys doing, it would wreck that guy in the front. If you got off to one side too far, it would actually try to spin the car that you were pushing, try to spin him out. These cars wiggle a little bit, but I don't see anybody look like they're out of control, no matter what the configuration is.
And Bob was talking this morning when we were on speed.com. We know this is a big day for the 20 car as far as letting the engine guys learn some things. In fact, they changed the engine in that car before practice started this morning.
Speaking of Bob, let's return to Mr. Dillner.
Another guy that's doing some things with his engine is Kevin Harvick. An interesting thing, and Larry McReynolds, as a former crew chief, you know how the deal goes. You want to try all things that you can in a 3-day test. So what the Richard Childress racing cars are the ones that are left down here, the Paul Menard number 27 car and Kevin Harvick with the 29, what they have done for the final hours of testing is swap engines. They want to find some stuff out about different power plants in different cars. So they swapped engines late in that first practice, the morning practice, and into the break. So that's what both of those teams are working on in this particular practice session.
Well, sometimes, and I don't know that it's as big a deal today with the smaller box of rules that you have to work with these cars. But there was many a time when I was with Robert Yates Racing and with Richard Childress Racing, if we had a car that was faster than another car from one team to the other, or maybe internally with one team, sometimes the easiest way to answer the question, is it the car or is it the engine, is just basically swap the engines from one car to the other.
Pedo tube.
Sticking up on the roof. I got, of all the Twitter questions I've got, that's probably a third of them are about that tube. And it just measures airspeed, what it measures. They have them on airplanes. It's hooked up to all the telemetry. These cars are loaded down with telemetry to pick up all kinds of data, ride height, you know, side forces, yaw, you name it. They're monitoring everything about that race car.
Want to mention, too, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was here the first 2 days. He's gone home. His sister Kelly is getting married today to L.W. Miller, a short track racer in his own right, and Dale Jr., part of the festivities. So Josh Wise is aboard that 88. Bob Dillner told us earlier this morning Josh will run a limited schedule of nationwide series races for Junior Motorsports this year.
Good kid. He drove for Michael a little while, and he's a really good kid. And a great little driver, really. I think if he could get somewhere and get kind of settled in, he could do a great job.
Mark Martin, 52-year-old Mark Martin, back earlier in the month, turned 52 years old. Talked to him a little bit during the lunch break. And, you know, as I think we were talking this morning on our show, you know, Mark is always upbeat. He's always looking forward to the next season. He's always looking forward to the next race weekend. Now, this car with his new crew chief, Alan Gustafson, they, for the most part, they've been working on, or Lance McGrew is his crew chief. Oh, you $1, Burns.
Owe me $1.
Oh, I'm $1. There's Alan Gustafson. He's now with Jeff Gordon. But this car, the 5 car, whoever crew chiefs it, they've been working on single car runs this entire 2.5 days of testing.
Let's go to Krista.
Hey guys, don't feel bad. Remember, Steve Letarte admitted that he actually timed the wrong car here while we're down here at testing. Casey Kane, teammate Brian Vickers, you guys were the first ones to really test out the draft, the 2-car pack. Have you learned everything you need to in the draft with each other?
I think so far. I mean, there's things we'll probably learn when the pack's a lot bigger and how the 2 cars work at that point, or how the big pack works with the new nose and things. So it's a little bit different, but pretty similar. We still have some things to try as far as maybe some single car stuff, but I think we're pretty close to being about done.
And when you say, are you disappointed that we haven't seen a bigger pack?
I am. I think we could, that'd be nice if there was a 20-car pack, because there's definitely some things that we could look at there with cows and how you suck up to that type of a pack, but there's not enough people that want to do it, so we'll have to wait until probably like Bud Shootout or 150 practice.
And I don't know if we've asked you while we've talked to you all weekend, too. How are the knees doing?
Oh, my knees are good. They actually feel better now than they did before I got the work done, and they're still not, completely recovered or healed. So I'm happy I did it. It was a little bit of a mess for about a month. It was, I was aggravated and wanted to be doing things, and I couldn't. But once that first month passed, it's been really good.
All right. Thanks, Casey.
The drivers want to go out and run in big packs, and that's all fun and games for them.
Until somebody gets hurt.
Until a car gets wrecked.
Right.
And that's why the crew chiefs are saying, we're not going to do that. We don't have time.
We need to collect data, man.
We don't need fun and games. We need data.
That's right.
Stay with us here in Daytona.
Johnson, Pruitt.
What do Elvis, Evel Knievel, JFK, and Brett Michaels have in common? They're all linked to the amazing cars selling today at the Barrett-Jackson Collector Car Auction. Saturday at Barrett-Jackson means the best of the best will be crossing the block, and we'll have 11 hours of live coverage for you at the top of the hour. Yellow lights blinking right now on this 5th and final test session at NASCAR Sprint Cup winter testing here at Daytona. And Jeff, we are all looking forward to seeing a few more cars, including the drivers too, getting in these big packs as they check for the cleanliness of the racetrack right now. Let's talk about what they were saying a moment earlier. The drivers want to have some fun. They want to go out there and draft. That might not be the crew's position.
Well, I mean, I think Larry was trying to make sure they understood that, but let's take it one step further. What the crew chiefs are trying to do, not only do we need to get data, we also don't want these guys making us having to burn the midnight oil any more than we already going to have to before we get ready to come back down here. You go out there and wad up a race car, they'll be sitting back at the house with their feet kicked up on the recliner, you know, watching speed and enjoying the evening while the rest of us are in the shop working. So, I mean, it's always that kind of like a catch-22 you run into. You want to be out there seeing them draft, but you know when they make the mistake, they come back and they kind of give you that puppy dog look, like, you know, it's okay, I wrecked the car. Yeah, I'm sorry. You know, but you got to fix it.
Fun at least.
JR, you've never worked on these. I can tell right now you've never had to work on one of these race cars.
So it's all fun and games until somebody wrecks, as we
exactly
said
right.
earlier. You know, there is a lot of fun to be had down here during this winter testing session. Not only do you get to see your drivers on the track in a laid-back atmosphere having some fun, but they also had 2 nights of Fan Fest activities where fans got up close and personal with their favorite drivers. Here's Rutledge Wood.
We're wrapping up the second night of the Fan Fest here at Daytona, and it's always a great time when you let the fans ask the questions. But also, the drivers get to have their fun, too. Tonight, it was at Joey Logano's expense.
I could be number 20.
He's only a couple years older than me. He's like 3 years away or so.
Can you buy beer yet?
No, I can't.
That's awesome.
Not till May 24th.
Oh, that's just, it's refreshing is what it is.
The best part about it is he was on the Gillette deal and he doesn't even shave yet. I asked him, I said, hey, Joey, you shaved this week? He goes, does it look like it? I'm like, I don't know.
20 years right here.
Joey was doing the commercials. He just still had the plastic cover on. Is that what? Just moving the shaving cream around. Just moving the shaving cream.
I never cut myself.
She just asked if he would trade his pudding for her fruit roll-up. So I guess just a schoolyard trade, you know? Now, Ryan Newman took some questions about his time in college, while Kyle Busch's fans were more concerned about his digits.
I understand the cars better because of the engineering, the math, the physics.
I just want to know how it feels when I beat you with absolutely no education.
You know the difference between good and great?
What's that?
I didn't think you would.
Kyle Busch, how's your 2 fingers?
My 2 fingers? These ones?
You're half right.
Oh, these ones? You mean these ones? This one's really good because it's got a ring on it now, so it's going to be holding me down more.
Now, the one thing I can tell you about tonight for sure is everybody was hugging it out. Isn't that right, Cody?
Yes.
Thanks, buddy. Oh, there we go. Look at this. Yes. Yes.
How cute.
Yeah, talking about weird people.
Slide down now, Matt.
Oh, we can just feel the love in the air here at Daytona. And you also feel a lot of love in the garage area, too, because right now, everybody's happy with each other. The new crew chiefs are getting to know the new drivers that they're paired up with. It's all love right now.
Well, if you'd been looking a little earlier, Larry and Darrell up there, they were hugging it out when Darrell was talking about the love and the affair, you know, all the stuff that's going on, the honeymoon. They're hugging it out.
I think that's what they call too much information. Let's give you some information about what's going on the racetrack. Denny Hamlin and Joey Logano are still leading the way as teammates up there. 197.3 miles per hour for those guys. Darrell talked about it just a moment ago, but look at the parity, Jeff. Look at how close a lot of those speeds are.
Yeah, Darrell was talking about that earlier. I mean, it's just really, you know, a couple thousandths of a second right now would make the difference between being 5th or 6th and put the fastest car. So, you know, these guys, a lot of them are really showing that they're very, very compatible and running about a lot of the same speeds.
Another guy that's playing the game of getting to know you right now is Marcus Ambrose. He's got some new teammates to get to know. Krista?
Yeah, Marcus Ambrose now over with Richard Petty Motorsports in the number 9. And we were joking, though, you're sitting in this race car and you almost sort of look lonely. You want to get back out there.
I'm actually fighting a cold, so this is the warmest spot I can find. And, you know, it's nice to be in slightly warmer weather, but, you know, the wind's picked up this afternoon. There is a bit of chill around. So, you know, I'm just sitting in the car, staying nice and warm and waiting for my guys to make some changes.
Well, I think you're sort of getting gypped, though, compared to your teammate, because AJ's been in the draft quite a bit, and you're the one doing all the single car runs.
Not at all. You know, we actually had a plan before we came here that we weren't going to touch the draft. We were just going to focus on our car speed, and our plan's working out perfectly. You know, we've actually had a really good couple of days testing down here. The Stanley guys have really got a good piece underneath me, and I'm looking forward to it. It's a lot of fun when you start actually making progress.
All right, thanks, Marcus. Johnny?
Krista, thanks a lot. Now, you might think that a 3,400-pound race car would not be affected whatsoever because it's so heavy and there's so much downforce by the wind. But, Jeff, when you look at this kind of wind, Marcus Ambrose is one of the first guys on the radio this morning to say, hey, look, guys, we got to be careful out here because we're getting tossed around. Yeah, and that's one thing you got to be very, very careful about, especially when you get crosswinds here at Daytona. You see it's gusting up. There's 17 mile an hour pretty steady and probably gusting up to almost 25 miles an hour. So, you know, it can be very, very tricky. This is one of the things we fight all the time, in particular at this racetrack. You're looking at Old Glory right there, and it's showing it's pretty much maybe blowing a little bit faster than 17 miles an hour. And 36% humidity is very low for the past 3 days right here, and that has a great effect on the race cars as well. More teammates, nose to tail, and talking in the garage as well. We'll be back with more winter testing in a moment.
26 drivers have been on track in this afternoon's session. Kyle Busch being pushed by his teammate Denny Hamlin down the backstretch.
Now this is the 2 of the Joe Gibbs cars. Earlier we saw Kyle Busch in the 18 out there, but he was making single car runs. But the big thing, we had the 20 and the 11 of Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin running together at the beginning of this practice, and it seems like that a big topic between those 2 drivers were vibration. Joey said once he got faster than a certain RPM that the vibration kept coming back, and Denny Hamlin told Mike Ford it's vibrating everywhere at all speeds when those 2 cars were hooked up a while ago.
You know, Larry, something I'm noticing, and I know this from some prior experience of working with Toyota and the truck teams just like you were, the Toyotas, you see 4 of them at the top of the speed chart, and they have some pretty sophisticated data acquisition that they share with all the teams. The one thing about a Toyota team, there are no secrets. If you want to know what Kyle Busch or Casey Kane or anybody on the Toyota team is doing, you just go ask them. And they have an open book policy. We'll show you everything that we're doing, and we'll show you, you know, setup or whatever. And I think that with those cars that seem to continue to work together at the top of the speed charts, I got to believe they have an agenda. I'm not sure what it is, but I think they're really trying to figure out something between all 4 of those cars.
And this will be the 5th season for Toyota being in the Sprint Cup Series. Of course, they did win a race here with Kyle Busch in the July race in 2008, but Toyota trying to win their very first Daytona 500.
Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin swapping spots.
You know, something John Roberts said before going to break a while ago was about 37% humidity, and he said, you know, how much that can affect the race cars. And to go a little further with that, the biggest thing that will affect is the engine tuning, especially when you look at the humidity the last 2 days. It was over 60% on Thursday. It was almost 80% yesterday. That's a big swing in the tuning of these engines, whether it be jetting, ignition timing, things of that nature. Don't know that it affects the way these cars are driving that much, but certainly affects the engines.
It's all good information. You know, if practice gets rained out, or something disrupts your practice, maybe an engine failure, whatever. You have all this information. Here's what jets we had, what timing we had when the conditions were here. Here's what we had when the conditions were there. That's part of being down here for 3 days, is we have had different varying conditions. It's hot on Thursday, a little cloudy on Friday, and today it's a little chilly, but pretty clear outside with some pretty good air to make horsepower with. But then you got the wind you got to deal with.
That's Bill Elliott aboard that 09, car owned by James Finch, and expect Bill to run about 20 races, maybe more, in that 09 car this year. A moment ago, we saw Penske teammates in the garage chatting. Bob Dillner has more on that story.
7th and 8th right now on the speed charts is Brad Keselowski and also Kurt Busch. Remember, Kurt Busch did not plan to test at all in these 3 days, but they changed that idea this morning. Steve Addington wanted to get his car out there with the 2 car because it was a monkey see, monkey do situation. He believes in February here we're going to see 40, or I should say 20 2-car drafts, so you're going to really need a dancing partner here. And it was very interesting when they climbed out of the cars, the 2 drivers talking to each other with the engineers, and they were explaining what they were doing with the pedals on the race car. In fact, at one point, Kurt Busch broke 2 hammers out. And I asked Steve Addington, what was he showing the engineers at Brad Keselowski with those 2 hammers? And he said he was simulating what he was doing with the pedals, and more specifically, what he was doing with the brake in the draft. And the brake is not something we talk about a lot here, DW, but around this racetrack in the draft, a brake is an essential part of making those 2 cars go fast.
Yeah, Bob, what they're doing is what we call trail braking, or just kind of using the brake to slow the car down to hold the position that they're in. If you, again, we talked about this yesterday, the momentum of these restrictor plate engines, once you start lifting out the throttle, it takes a little bit of time for the engine to recover and to get back up to speed. So what these guys have learned through the years down here is you drag the brake. And sometimes, Michael told me, when he won the Daytona 500, I know it was 10 years ago, but what he did was he drug the brake in the middle of the corner to let whomever was behind him run up on his rear bumper. And then that way, that would break the momentum of the guy behind him, and he'd release the brake and take off and get some room between him and the guy behind him. And so there's a lot of games that you can play, and in all fair, I might add, to using the brake and not letting up on the throttle, because you just can't afford to do that.
Talked to Greg Biffle during the lunch break. In fact, they quit early this morning because Greg Irwin, his crew chief in that group, Doug Yates, they wanted to put a fresh engine in this 16 car. I kind of asked Greg, I said, okay, what is the plan now for the final 4 hours? He said, well, we've got about 6 or 7 things we want to run in single car form, but I do hope we get a little bit of drafting in before this day ends.
Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch atop the speed chart. In fact, 4 Toyotas leading the way. Team meeting amongst the Gibbs drivers, Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, and Denny Hamlin. Final session of a 3-day test here at the Daytona International Speedway. Meanwhile, check out those teammates.
Working together here.
I was talking to Travis Geisler, who's moved into a role of like competition director over there at Penske Racing. And, you know, we've documented this well over the last 2.5 days as Casey Kane in the 4 is going to join this group. One of the things the teams have been trying to figure out and work on, how many laps can I stay tucked up behind a car because there's no airflow going to the radiator? It seems like the consensus between all the teams, or amongst all the teams, is about 3 to 3.5 laps. Then it starts to get way up. Now, we watched the Stewart-Haas cars near the end of that practice this morning. They came in and pulled all the tape off the nose of the car, which really hurts the drag of the car, which the car doesn't know about the drag when you're the car that's pushing a car. Like Kevin Mannion, crew chief from McMurray, told me, said, you know what, that would work fine as far as pushing someone, but you're not going to be able to win a race with no tape. But the Stewart-Haas cars were able to go 6 laps with no tape on the front end of their race car.
And one other thing I see them working on, teammates, is passing. You know, because of that, you got to get out, you know, you can't run behind, so you got to get out front or get in front of the guy that you're following. I've seen a number of guys really working on passing, and it seems like the preferred spot is going into turn 1. Seem to whoop out through the travel here, make the passing, get right back in line to see how much momentum you're going to lose.
Bob Dillner.
Steve, Richard Childress Racing appears to be working on power today. Remember, just a short time ago, I told you the 29 and the 27 of Kevin Harvick and Paul Menard swapped engines. Well, all of a sudden I saw the engine lift and this engine come over to the 27 pit. That's Danny Lawrence from ECR Engines working to the left on that engine. And over here, they are going to change the engine again for the second time today and the third engine during this 3-day test. So some big-time power exploration here for Richard Childress Racing and this team. Krista?
Well, not as dramatic over here at the 16. They made the engine change over the lunch break, and Greg said they were going to do a couple things with that to make sure everything's okay. As if you were scanning Greg Biffle, you heard him say something's not working, and of course everyone panics and thinks, is it the engine? No, not drama at all, nothing to panic about. It was the radio. He said he sounds like he's talking in a tin can. The other concern though here, remember Greg Biffle said he wants to draft. He's not leaving if he doesn't draft, but the team says we may just do single car runs. We have a lot of information we need to get, and these are their primary cars for the 500 at the Roush camp. Steve?
All right. Oh, brother, where art thou? Singing into the tin can.
Greg Irwin says, stick to the plan, would you? Stay with us here for more winter testing. Carl Edwards waits to hit the high banks. Meanwhile, look at the data acquisition on the right rear hub of that race car.
I've never seen anything like that. No. That's a new one on me. You can see that the wires run under the car. I know this car has complained a lot through the last year about vibration.
That's true.
And I'm not sure, maybe this is some sort of a monitor sensor that's actually going into the rear end, and but it's a new piece on me.
I don't know if it's a strain gauge of some kind. I've seen a lot of different pieces and parts show up with data acquisition, but this one definitely goes straight to the top of the charts, and I have no idea.
I saw that on a semi-truck sitting in a truck stop the other day, and that was how they measured, you know, how far they'd been stopping and going and all. But I don't know, that's the only thing I could even come close to.
Well, we've been asked to make our early predictions about speed weeks. But Shootout, Daytona 500 pole sitter, and the Daytona 500 winner. I think what I gathered from that, it's all over the place.
Well, you know, I think sometimes it's a little, I won't say easy. None of these picks are easy, but it's a little more, it's a little easier to pick maybe who will sit on the pole. But when it comes to that final column over there, the Daytona 500, when you just think about it, we've had 9 different winners in the last 9 Daytona 500s. And to be quite honest, if you look especially the last 3, McMurray, Kenseth, and Newman, I'm not sure they were on anyone's radar coming down here, or maybe even a few days out from the Daytona 500.
Back to Johnny and Jeff.
So, Mr. Hammond, there we agree on one thing. We don't agree on anything else. We're basically on the same team on the Daytona 500 pole and the Earnhardt Childress Racing engines.
No, I think that's a pretty accurate assessment right there, but it's good to know that I'm not totally by myself. Bob Dillner thinks that we can win the Daytona 500, and you and I think we can win the Budweiser Shootout.
Yep, and me and Darrell Waltrip think that Smoke is going to get the job done. Let's go to Bob Dillner to find out what the deal is on that instrument.
Just really quickly, talking to the Roush Fenway engineers down here, it's measuring slip angle, the angle of the tire with the racetrack and how the body or the car is pointed. That's the simple explanation, because they went into great detail. I didn't understand, boys.
Well, Bob, thank you very much for clearing that up. That's a new one on all of us here, and you learn something new every day, especially when you're down here watching winter testing at Daytona. Now, we will continue with testing coverage on speed.com. But right now, we're going to send it to Barrett Jackson in Scottsdale, Arizona for the finest collector car auction anywhere. So we got you covered all over Speed. Thanks for joining us, and keep it right here.